Hello everyone and welcome back to J1 Aviation. So today's scenario training for private pilots is around emergencies. So here's the scenario that just played out last week, landing a fixed gear aircraft without a nose wheel assembly. So this is actually kind of hard to imagine. Potentially you could run into something like this with a retractable gear aircraft where the gear won't come down and lock into place. But for a fixed gear aircraft, I can't imagine this happens very often. So what do you do when it comes to landing without a nose gear? So if you haven't watched Vass Aviation's video on this, I'll link it in the description below. It's definitely worth watching. So what happened was that a student pilot was flying solo with only a handful of hours, and she was flying by herself. So after rotation, apparently some part of the nose gear assembly fell off and was observed by another pilot who mentioned it to the tower. So right away, the tower calls this aircraft with the student pilot and was like, "Hey, you lost your nose gear assembly. Say intentions." I have to imagine at this point, she is probably trying to process everything. Even an experienced pilot probably needs a few moments to come up with a plan. But what was really cool was that at this point, there were two other instructors in other aircraft on the same frequency who jumped in on the radio to provide assistance if she needed, of course, which she took them up on. But her training was apparently good and she had already paid off because she already knew the plan. So she asked, if she should treat this like a soft field landing, and that was, absolutely correct. So the instructor came on, coached her through it. So some of the things that they talked about, which are good takeaways from all of this, just make it a normal pattern. Fly the aircraft and keep it under control. You've heard aviate, navigate, communicate. The plan, is fly the airplane first. And then run through checklists as normal, set yourself up for a normal soft field landing, which involves holding the nose off as long as possible after touchdown, then slowly releasing the pressure. So the nose, comes down very softly. One great suggestion that they had was to fly a low approach the first time. So, get established on final and then come in for a low pass, just get a feel for the wind, get a feel for what it takes to keep the crosswind correction, keep the aileron in, keep the nose straight with the rudder. So that was actually a really good suggestion. And then also it was mentioned that when she would come in for the second time with the intention of landing, that, if things didn't look right or feel right this time, just go around again. You're not committed to landing this time, try it again. So all of those are good things to keep in mind. Another thing was that, after touchdown, maybe there would need to be some, left-right braking just to keep the aircraft heading down the runway. And then also after she was down and the aircraft wasn't going to fly again, pull the mixture, kill the engine, turn off the mags and master. So what was really neat listening to this was the change in the student pilot's voice. So when ATC first notified her of the situation, she sounded scared, really, as anyone would be. But after chatting with the flight instructor, after doing that first low pass, he was constantly encouraging her. You could just hear the confidence in her voice towards the end, and that was really cool. And then, of course, the situation ended successfully, so that was great. And then, the last neat thing about this is it was mentioned at the end of the video was that it's really a community effort to help her out. She was doing the heavy lifting by flying the airplane, but you had the instructor on the radio guiding her. There was another aircraft which seemed to have an instructor on as well, kind of in the area circling in case they needed to be of any support. You had the tower, you had the ground crews available, and it's really neat seeing everything come together like this for a successful outcome. So if you haven't listened to it, you really should. So there you go. Hopefully your nose gear never comes off when you're flying a fixed gear aircraft. But if it does, you treat it as a normal soft field landing. And don't forget you have a ton of support around you on the radio if necessary, the tower, likely other flight instructors, and the whole aviation community. So thanks everyone for watching today. We'll hope you join us on a future flight, and thanks for flying J1 Aviation.